I wanted to welcome everyone to our first virtual alumni meeting. I'm Pamela Whitty Nye, class of 1993. I'm the current moderator for the Alumni Association Council. So also on the council are Ellie Rourke, class of 2012, who's the secretary, Mark Gensler, class of 1995, who is the treasurer, Melanie Knight Gottlieb, 02, but she was there also when I was there, so I count her also in my class, who was the recent moderator, CJ Churchill, class of 1991, Dagmawi Iyasu Mintu, 98, Kate Hollander, 02, Bess Lyons Pullman, 92, and then Amy Domrad Tudor, class of 1999. So we are, if we're not all here, we are definitely here in spirit. And our agenda today includes a few short presentations by council members on some topics. Then we'll do a Q&A, starting with questions that were submitted ahead of time. We can't promise that we'll get to all of the questions, and a lot of them were very similar, so your question might be answered by someone else's question. And then after we open up the floor to any more questions, hopefully we will have some time to do a little just sort of meet and greet among ourselves. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Melanie.
All right, let's see if I can share my screen. So you should all see, if someone could give me a thumbs up and let me know that they see the survey. Okay, great. All right, so I want to thank everyone who answered the survey. The council has been working pretty diligently for the last year to get ourselves organized and deal with some of the administrivia that is required for having an organization. And then we decided it's time now to ask the community how we should prioritize what we see as the rest of our work. And we wanted to get some input. And so that's what this survey was mainly about. So first is who responded to the survey. We had 356 responses, which we felt was a really pretty great response rate. 93.3% of those who responded considered themselves in the student category. And then we had some small slivers of faculty, staff. We had a classics fellow. I'm going to guess that was maybe one or two. And people who call themselves friends of the college. So the first question we asked was, how often do you want to hear from us? Because that's one of the struggles that we all have. We all have way too much email that we don't answer. And sometimes from the council perspective, we do feel like we're sort of shouting into the void occasionally. So we said, do you want to hear from us monthly? Do you want to hear from us bi-monthly? Do you want to hear from us quarterly? I would say in the end, as we look at that, those answers, we really didn't get a clear response. And so we're probably going to make 2/3 of the people unhappy, regardless of when we choose to do it. And so for now, our communications have been mainly just about monthly. And honestly, that's probably, unless we get some volunteers to manage some of that, is probably about as much as we can manage ourselves. So I hope that this screen is readable for you. But what we asked about on this, so for those of you who are on a small screen, I'm going to apologize in advance, but I'll try to articulate pretty clearly what's here. We asked about long-term priorities, and the options that we talked about were building archives, relaunching Potash Hill Magazine, building relationships with partnering organizations such as the festival, but not limited to the festival, professional networking for alumni, alumni outreach, and building our community contact database, establishing a firm financial footing for our organization, holding reunions and gatherings, and creating and running intellectual and creative programming. All of those options were things that either members of the council brought forward or we'd been hearing from community members. And so those were the top things that people had been asking us about. And the community prioritized them in the ones on the left. So the first priority, building archives. Second priority, building relationships with partnering organizations. Third was alumni outreach and building our community contact database. And fourth was holding reunions and gatherings. So that appears to be our community priorities. And 3 of those 4 priorities, I will say, require us also to work on our financial inputs and building a firm financial organization. So let's see. So I want to talk a little bit about the next section that we asked about, which was short-term priorities. We asked about sharing news and class notes. In the ranking, 1 was least important, 4 was most important. We asked people to rank them in these short-term priorities. And sharing news and class notes were really, most people said that it was a high priority for us. Fundraising, that was, I would say that people recognize that that's probably an important piece for us as well. Planning an in-person event and planning a virtual event. So these 2 seem, in-person event leans a little bit more towards not a priority right now. That's probably having a lot to do with COVID and the logistics and finances required. But planning a virtual event was sort of ambivalent to popular. So here we are with our first virtual event. Thinking about events, we dove in a little bit deeper. We asked about virtual events, we asked about local events, we asked about regional events, and we asked about national events. And so it really felt like the preference right now seems to be virtual and local, which makes a lot of sense given the pandemic circumstances. And actually, those are probably a lot more doable for the council. So that was good news for us. And that's the end of all of the survey data. And I am going to turn the mic. I'm going to stop sharing. And sorry, I don't have the run of show document in front of me. Pam, who am I turning the mic over to? To Kate. All right, Kate, you're up.
Hi, everyone. This is totally magical. It's so cool to see all of you. And it was amazing to hear everybody saying hi to each other as the joining of the Zoom was happening. I do want to say I had a couple of people tell me to say hello to everyone. So Laura Stevenson says hello and David Jesperson gives everyone a hug. So I want to talk about the extremely unglamorous yet very important issue of bylaws for our organization. We have a council subgroup working on a document that will become the bylaws for our organization. And that subgroup is me, former head select person extraordinaire, Ellie Rourke, and 2 nonprofit experts, Pam and Amy. So this document is a combination of a community constitution and a standard set of nonprofit governing bylaws. So it is not town meeting handbook, it is not town meeting bylaws, but it has some character of a community cultural document. It's mostly, though, a pretty slim set of articles governing the Marlboro College Alumni Association, and as part of that, the Marlboro College Alumni Council. It's meant to be inclusive and non-restricting, but also to give some shape to our organization. So we are constrained a little bit in that we need to include some things that all 501c3 nonprofit organizations have to have. They have to have certain kinds of things. This document, I think, is not going to end up being more than about a dozen pages. Ellie, nod your head if you think that's about right. Yeah, it's going to be pretty short. So the bylaws are being drafted article by article by our subgroup with input and editing and suggestions from the whole council. And eventually we'll get formal approval at that stage from the council. However, they need to be ratified, not by us, but by the entire organization. That's all of you. So we will put a ratification vote to the community in the fall. At the same time that we have elections for the 3 seats that are coming open on council, and Amy's going to tell you about that shortly. We hope that you will approve them. We need these bylaws to govern our organization, but we plan to have another virtual meeting, I think, very specific to the bylaws ahead of that ratification vote for more Q&A, community input, just a conversation, so that when they come before you, hopefully they won't be a complete surprise. You'll have a sense, or you'll have had the chance to acquire a sense of kind of what they're all about. As I said before, they are not necessarily glamorous, but they are the foundation for everything that we will want to do in the future. So that is coming up. And I think that's all I've got to say about the bylaws.
All right, I think I'll go next about the elections, and it's super brief, but I am so pleased to see everybody. It's just wonderful to have a gathering like this. And I also wanted to acknowledge all the work that the council did before I joined in January. They got through so much foundational work. So I got to come in midway and really appreciate probably what they haven't seen, how much work has been done. So in terms of the elections, they'll be held in November or December, somewhere around that time frame, with the 3 new members taking seats in January. And the seats, the 3 positions that will be open are 3-year terms. There's really not much more to say than that, but of course questions are available at the end. So I think the next was supposed to be Mark, who couldn't join us today. Melanie, do you have that? Okay.
I do.
We also need to send out a collective get well to Mark, who is under the weather. So
Yes.
Everyone send out good wishes to Mark Gensler.
Absolutely.
So.
All right, so I'm speaking for Mark. Mark is our treasurer and has had the joyous duty of trying to deal with the bank accounts and the transition of all of the financial information from the interim council to this first elected council. And that actually was a mammoth task, and we have a lot to thank Mark to do that, because as you might imagine, when you have a council that is distributed, frankly, across the globe, and you have to have a physical address in the state of Vermont where we are incorporated, and we have a very nice community local bank in Vermont. And so the complexity is a lot. Another shout out to Randy Nags, who has really done a lot to help us keep this going. So fundraising. So right now, it costs about $1,200 a year to run our organization. And that is just to have the few things that we have. We have a website. We have a MailChimp application so we can send emails to everyone and keep track of that. We've got the swag account that we need to keep up. We've got just a few Squarespace. We've just got a few things. So that's what it costs to run the organization. We did get a small amount of dollars from the interim council, and but those we have used only at this point to pay for incorporation costs. It was about $200 to become a 501c3. And so that's how much it costs, and that's how we're going to focus our fundraising up to, for now, is just to get to a place where we can sustain ourselves. In the future, we would hope that we would have fundraising needs that would be tied to specific projects and specific goals. But this year, it's really about creating a sustainable foundation for the organization. Mark also really wanted to thank all of the interim council members, because that 1,200, I mean, all of the council members, the interim council members and the current council members, because all of the expenses for the organization up to this point are being handled by individual people who are on the council. So we're not taking that seed money, that little bit of seed money that we have. And with that, am I turning it over to Pam to start Q&A?
Yes. Quick question. Did you mean Randy George?
Oh, I did mean Randy George, not Randy Neggs. Thank you
Okay.
for that. Randy George. That's embarrassing.
That's okay.
I was thinking about the trails earlier. And
I know.
so the name was in my head. Thank you.
Works together. So, okay. So we got a good variety of questions. And if something comes to you as we're chatting, feel free to, we're going to be taking questions from the floor at the end of the meeting. The first question, which is probably on everyone's mind, is how can we best keep the spirit of Marlboro College alive going forward? Is it about the land or perhaps online teaching specials? Thank you for all you do. And Bess had a very good answer for this question. Oh, Bess, you're still on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay. I guess you're referring to the question, what is Marlboro now?
Yes.
Okay. So that is a great question. I don't know who asked it, but I hope it's one we never stop asking. That's one that all organizations need to tackle constantly. By now I asked, do you mean that we are dealing not just with the physical loss of the school, but asking from an existential perspective, what that means for us as a group? So, there have been many other institutions, groups, countries that have been kind of cut adrift from their origin, and they all somehow managed to keep going if they balance the needs of the present with kind of keeping that history moving forward. That was my written response. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that. I would love to hear from other people what, for them, the answer is to what is Marlboro now.
Absolutely. And we can gather that perhaps through email and share out. So another question that's related is, what is the best way to keep the history of Marlboro College alive, recorded, and accessible to alums? So I am still on the archives committee, co-chaired with Bess, and our first charge was to make sure that the materials of the college was placed in a safe home going forward. So, but now we're moving on. Once we've done that, we are moving on to try to do a combination of looking at what do people have in their, personal collections. I know I've got a stash of assorted things from my time at the college. And so we're looking at different ways that this could be shared out with the community. And the material at UVM is still being processed. It's not yet available, but as it is processed, they will be making this available to the alums. So.
I also wanted to add that it would be great if any people that are currently academics or have graduate students or that might be interested in doing a case study of Marlboro or any articles on the college. Tom Regal said, a history of Marlboro, perhaps coupled with other similar schools, by an objective, competent, and sympathetic historian would make for a great case study. for a graduate school of education. Its founding, its rise, and its fall. There are so many lessons to be learned from it.
The next question is going to be, is there a fund for the Alumni Association going forward? And Melanie, would you like to take that one?
Sure, and I think I answered most of this in the financial presentation, but the short answer is really not really. We inherited a few $100s from the interim council, and most of that money I think came from the selling of swag, which is a very, I will say, we don't get a lot from that. It's a very small amount of money that we get from that. And it costs about $1,200 a year to maintain what we have right now. And we have a few things that we want to do in the future, like even just some basic infrastructure things like a database for to keep track of all of our members in the Marlboro alumni in something better than a spreadsheet. So these are things that we need to fundraise for. The exciting thing is that with the hard work of Mark Gensler and Eric Olson is our webmaster, and he does an amazing job. Mark and Eric just were able in the last few weeks to launch an online donation platform. So we now can receive donations, which we have electronically, which we didn't have a way to do before. Previously, you would have had to mail a check to the PO box in Marlboro. Randy George would have to go and pick it up and get it and deposit it to the bank. And he doesn't go check that mailbox every day. We would have to, it would be very cumbersome. So an electronic means is easier for everybody, and we're really excited about that.
Thank you. The next group of questions were all a variety of, I have an idea, so what's the next step? We had a lot of good suggestions or questions for projects or ideas. And Melanie, I wanted to come back to you again on this.
No problem. So we love the ideas and the energy. And if you have an idea, email the council at info@marlborocollegealumniassociation.com. And that email address is listed on our website. So you don't have to write it down now. You can go to the website and grab that, and we'll respond. There's several of us who monitor that email inbox all the time. I want to caveat that So that we are a small but dedicated group of volunteers who all have full-time jobs. And we're still building the capacity of this organization. So an idea that will be really successful will be an idea that comes to us with kind of a thoughtful plan, a group of dedicated people who want to make it happen. Better to have more than one person, and that have an understanding of what the financial resources and the human resources that would be required to make it happen, and that it aligns with our overall sort of organizational mission. We can't support everything, but we want to try to support as many things as we can.
Absolutely. And a lot of the good grassroots ideas are coming from people who have a vested interest in that idea, which will help the momentum going forward. The next question that typically we get on a regular basis is Potash Hill magazine in the works? So for this, I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
Thanks, Pam. Yes, but it turns out it's a little bit more complicated than we originally might have thought. So there are different needs and visions in the mix. So what we're trying to do is find a way to meet more immediate community needs, like, for example, class notes, which people really want and which are sort of a little bit easier to do in an online flexible format, while also thinking much longer term about the really handsome twice yearly periodical that the original Potash Hill was, and how to get that going again too. both these things will likely take some money and more person power than we anticipated. There's a little bit of chicken and egg we have to figure out with budgets and fundraising and budgets, but it's something we know that alumni really want to see. So it's an important goal, and it's a goal that we understand is a little bit of a longer term goal, maybe some elements of the kind of like more really sort of like, articles and intellectual content of a journal. Those elements might be a little bit more on hold, but we are absolutely working on it.
Thank you. The next question is, can we obtain a list of who has signed up with the Alumni Council so that we can be in touch with our colleagues? The other general question is, can I have so-and-so's contact information? So I'm going to turn this one over to Melanie.
So as it turns out, we have some information for alumni, but we don't have a very complete list, and we don't actually have any sort of permission to share that information from individuals. And so in order to share contact information, we need to find a way to get that permission. And so one of our priority items in the coming year, and it's one of the items that requires some additional funding to implement, is to acquire an appropriate membership management database. And then once we do that, the vision would be, it would be connected to the website. And then you could log in, you could update your own information, and we would very specifically ask for permission to share, and we'd have levels of permission. And so once we have a real database in place, we'll be able to do that. For now, if there's someone you want to get in touch with, feel free to reach out. We are happy to look on our list and see if we have information for that person. If we have information for that person, we are happy to reach out to that person and share your information to them, and say this person is trying to reach you, and then hopefully that they will get in touch. One thing to keep in mind is that we don't have good email addresses for everyone. So sometimes that requires writing a postcard, which I've done a number of times. And so things don't happen quite so quickly in snail mail, but that's the infrastructure that we have right now. And our hope is that maybe by the end of this calendar year, we might be closer to having a more robust contact database.
Thank you. So the next group of questions are dealing with the archives. So that would be me and Bess answering a variety of questions. We do get questions about the digital archives. And so that's sort of it's a very broad question, but I understand you're trying to get to, either the older magazines or photographs. We do have control of the Marlboro College YouTube channel. So that is still live and available. We also have control of the Flickr account. So all of those photographs, which are on there that other people have submitted and was also added to by the communications office by Marlboro College, is still up and available, and it's very enjoyable to go through. UVM will probably put some things online, but as an archivist myself, I know it's really just an issue of time and resources of what first you have to process it, and then scanning is a whole nother, is a very time consuming process as well to get it done and available online. So we hope to work, hand in hand with UVM to see how we can support them getting the material available. And there are a few other places, such as there's a Green Mountain Digital Archives, which is Vermont's hub for the Digital Public Library of America. Every state has got a digital public library, and there are a few things on there, but that might be a way where we can share more information a little more broadly. And in relation to, this sort of goes into, do we have access to what's stored at UVM? In theory, almost everything at a university archives is open and available. There might be some records retention restrictions on certain records. So, and we can go through and try to detail that perhaps on the website to make it available, make that information available to everyone, so you know what might be restricted for a period of time. So then the other question we had was asking for a status update for the archives committee. So I would love to turn that over to Bess. Oh, you're on mute. There we go.
We are still very slowly working on our oral history project. Remember that the energy required to do something once is different from the energy required to sustain something over a very long haul. And we also have people working. So, but we've recently gotten a approval for a release form that UVM will accept, and that we're going to use for our oral histories. And so we're continuing work on that. Also on the updating the archives on the website. And I think our next plan should be to think about developing a place on the website for all of the work, important work that Marlboro graduates, staff, and faculty have done. And if there is someone that would like to work on that, I am sure that we would all invite someone's participation.
Absolutely. And I want to thank the other members, most recently CJ Churchill, who's on this call, Heather Carter, and Dan Toomey. I think Dan is 79. And then Heather is, I'm blanking on her. Is it, I believe it's 01.
I was going to say, I think it's early 2000s.
Early 2000. Okay. So, and we're meeting as we're able to. One thing you may have seen on the Emerson College website is Marlboro College Archives at Emerson. This was a project done by the IT department there, who saw a need to gather all of the digital information from the website before it went down. And working on that project were some former Marlboro College students. So it was very much a labor of love of trying to gather that information before it went off into the ether. So, so that was very important work that they were able to gather. So, okay. The next group of questions is on the music festival and the campus. And most of it boils down to what's up with the campus. So I'd like to turn this over to CJ.
Hi, thanks, Pam. It's so wonderful to see so many people here who I haven't seen in so many years. It's a really lovely chance we have to see each other again. And it's been a wonderful experience working on the Alumni Council with my colleagues and fellow alumni here, who I've gotten to know better than I knew many of them before. In that group on the Alumni Council, what we broke up into 3 subgroups, and one of those subgroups is a committee called the Resources Committee, which has been dedicated to reaching out to other parties which would have an affinity with Marlboro College alumni and friends of the college to try to establish good feeling and working relationships with these groups. And that resources group is composed of Bess Lyons-Pullman, Mark Gensler. We did have Gretchen Grazina, who was on the council for about a year or so, and then myself. And it's been a really rich and great experience to be working with that subgroup and reaching out to other parties, among which have been Emerson College. We've had very good conversations with their alumni staff, as well as with the people running the Marlboro Institute there. We've also had nice conversations with the Marlboro Foundation. And this leads me to the question that I'm addressing here. We've had a series of really good and productive conversations with Ellen McCulloch-Lovell, who is on the board of the music festival and who has been very generous and warm in her connection to us so far, and helping us get into the conversation with the music festival about what is happening with the campus. As of course, as we all know, the campus was in other hands and then suddenly wasn't. And it was a bit of a bumpy ride, but on the Alumni Council in resources, and I'm sure amongst almost all of you, it was an amazing relief to have it transition into the hands of the music festival. And so Ellen has really been fantastic in helping us think about talking with the festival. She's facilitated contacts with them. And through Ellen's good offices, we were then in touch with Christopher Serkin, who made it possible for our resources group to be one of the parties interviewed by the consultant group that the music festival has employed to help them think through just what their use of the campus is going to look like. And so we had a really good, productive conversation with the consultant. And all the questions that have come up about the campus in terms of use of the campus, can alumni have access to it? Can we have access to it for reunions or programming? All of these are going to continue to be in the mix of the conversation with Ellen and more broadly with the festival. And you know, from my point of view, and I think my colleagues on the resources group, things look very good for having an ongoing good relationship with the festival and access to the physical campus. The exact answers to these questions haven't quite been worked out yet, but one of the ideas that we floated, and Bess, I don't know if you would like to touch on this a little bit, is the idea of a museum that could be on the campus of the music festival that could be dedicated to things like not just the memory of Marlboro College, but also the history of the region. And that this could be a very creative, dynamic way to have the alumni engage with the festival ongoing, and also could branch out into other possible uses for campus. So that's, in summary, my my answer to the question, what's going on with campus? The answer is really, we're not exactly sure, but we're working things out. And it looks like we've got a great line of communication with the festival, which, as we know, owns the campus. So.
Just to add to that very wonderful explanation about the campus, in terms of immediate pressing concerns about visiting the campus right now, the trails are available for use in the winter through the Marlboro Nordic Ski Club with a small day use fee. Spencer Knickerbocker, who's an alum, is doing some really great work to maintain the campus trails for recreational use during the winter. And then the music festival is currently allowing local use of the trails during the summer as well, as long as folks are really respectful about the campus space. So the music festival is asking people, my understanding is that they're asking folks not to show up and wander around campus and try to get into the buildings right now. But the campus space is open for use through the trail system.
Okay. And Bess and I don't really have a quick answer for the museum. That's something that's been on the archives committee plate for a while. So we would just have to figure out logistically how that works, but that's probably lower in the priority list than some of the things like the oral histories. So, but it is something that we would like to see in some form or fashion, but we don't have a quick answer for that yet. Would you agree with that, Bess? Oh, can you unmute?
You're talking about the proposal that we put forth to the music festival?
Yes, for the museum on campus, but
I guess all I would say is, I think the music festival knows how strongly we feel about the place, our connection to it, and that we would like to see in some form or fashion some commemoration that is a living thing, rather than a dusty space with mementos. So if there's any way that that can be achieved and is workable with the goals of the music festival, that would be amazing. There's a lot of history that the music festival and Marlboro College have in common, both in terms of faculty and history, and in terms of the experiences that the faculty had, where they came from. So I think it's a really fruitful area, and one that I hope people will think about. And if they would like to work on that, that would be something that they would address to the music festival staff.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next, we will be moving into, oh, wait, one more question. How is the town of Marlboro doing? And we're going to turn this over to Amy.
Yes, hi. We only have about 5 more questions, so I certainly want to keep my answer brief because we want people to be able to answer questions sort of from the floor today. So how is the town of Marlboro doing is, of course, an extremely large, complex question. With the pandemic, we had a lot of people move to town. It seems to have influenced negatively our census records, like the count is off, there's all sorts of trouble like that. Most people seem pretty happy, the campus, in terms of whose hands who is holding that precious space now. So that's certainly been a relief from people that I have spoken with. Lots of complex feelings, but I think I'll just end there because we have so much more to get through.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. The next few questions are in relation to Emerson. So the first question is the Alumni Council acting on behalf of Emerson College, or is it an independent body? So for this, I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
Okay, I'm going to actually just answer this really quickly because I agree with Amy that we want to kind of move into questions from the floor. So Pam, I'll just answer the very first question, and then maybe we can move to the intellectual property. Do you want me to just do them? I'll just do them. I'll just
Sure, just you can
I'll
just
do both of them. Okay, so let me say the Marlboro College Alumni Association and the Marlboro College Alumni Council is not acting on behalf of any entity, Emerson or the Marlboro Institute. We are not the leftover residual corporation of Marlboro College. We are a very, and this is Mark's writing, and he writes very in parentheses, very independent, incorporated nonprofit with IRS 501c3 status. And we were incorporated by the previous interim council as a Vermont nonprofit corporation and granted 501c3 status under the current council's leadership. So no, we are totally independent and not acting on behalf of anyone else. The other question was, can the MCA get the rights to use Marlboro College intellectual property? So right now, under sort of the graces of Emerson allows us to use a few things. So for example, the seal of the college with our alumni logo without any contention. That is, they've let us know that they won't, for example, ask us to stop using it or, God forbid, sue us for using it. Something dire like that is not going to happen, but there's no formal dispensation or agreement. There's no really formality to that arrangement. So it is something we would like to formalize, and there are some perhaps possible avenues for that. Can't say too much more about it at the moment, but it is something we would like to see happen.
Thank you very much. And then the last question that we have on the list is, are retired faculty pensions undiminished? And I'm going to turn this over to Melanie.
So I'll just say I'm making an assumption that that question came out of sort of the caring community worried about our retired faculty. And we don't have the ability, the Alumni Association doesn't, it's not really in our domain. So we don't technically have the ability to answer. What I can say is that I'm a former Marlboro employee. And so I had a Marlboro designated TIAA retirement account, and that retirement account hasn't gone anywhere. That's my retirement account. So I have to assume that the rest of the staff and faculty who had that same arrangement would have the same one. And so, but I don't have an ability, and the Alumni Council doesn't have the ability to answer that question.